Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. If you're new here, my name's Anna, and on this channel, I'm sharing our journey of learning how to turn our home into a homestead. Today, we are just having a massive blueberry everything kind of day, and we are gonna go ahead and do fermenting of one of them. And we're gonna do a recipe called brined ginger blueberries. This recipe is out of this book called The Farmhouse Culture Guide to Fermenting. This book is just beyond gorgeous and beautiful, and the recipes that are inside of here are like normal recipes. They're not like some weird like thing that you have to go to 14 different grocery stores to find the recipes, at least the ones that I have found interesting. I'm sure there's some weird wacko ones in here that I just don't want to have anything to do with, but the ones that I have tried to find in here, like I have blueberries, so I'm like, all right, let's find a blueberry recipe. Perfectly tasty sounding, normal recipe. It's not anything weird. Like some fermenting recipes, like you just look at them and you're just like, huh? But this one is just really good. And I mean, some of the pictures that are in here are just, you know, some are kind of like not really got much to do with the recipe itself, but then some of them, you know, they're just really pretty. You know, it's just a really well done book. So I've been going and pouring through it for a while now, and I definitely would recommend that you guys get this if you have any desire to get involved in fermenting and just want a beautiful book on your shelf with lots of good recipes in it. If you're interested, I'm going to go ahead and link this book down below for you guys to have a link, and you can just click on and you can order it if you want to. If you don't, then no. But it's a really pretty book and I really like it. So we're gonna do this recipe. It's called brined ginger blueberries, and it's really simple. It calls for 480 milliliters. It's all in metric. 480 milliliters of distilled spring water. I just have our well water that I use, and then 20 grams of sea salt, 400 grams of fresh blueberries, which it says is a little more than a pint, but I have more than that. I think I have like 450 or something like that. And then 25 grams of chopped candied ginger. This is the candied ginger that we made in pretty recently, and I'll go ahead and link that video up there so you can check that out. It's super easy to make. And then we have 10 grams, it's really more like 12 or 15 grams of just chopped up ginger. And in the recipe, she says if you want it to have more of a gingery kick, you can swap out however much of the candied ginger that you want to, 1 for 1, for the just like grated up fresh ginger. And it's skinned ginger, peeled, whatever you want to call it. And then you also want 50 milliliters of a neutral brine from Basic Kraut. I don't have any kraut ready right now. I have an old carrot ferment, and so I went ahead and grabbed the brine from that. I'm pretty confident that you could do this recipe without any kind of a brine, but since I'm following the recipe, I'm going to follow it to the best of my ability, just to give it a good representation. So what we have is you're supposed to split up the water, and she says to put, I don't know why I'm saying she, I don't even know. Catherine and Shane, they say to go ahead and you want to take 145 milliliters of the water, and you're going to put the salt in there, and you're going to dissolve it. You're going to bring it up to a boil on the stove. So we're going to go ahead and get that going. And it says to lightly rinse the blueberries and then transfer them into a large bowl. We've already rinsed them off. Okay, so you're going to put all the berries in there, and then you're going to transfer both types of ginger. And I did not have the forethought to actually chop this up ahead of time, so I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, so then we're just going to kind of mix it up. And we're going to transfer it to our jar. We're using a Fido style jar, because all of my fermentation weights are being used right now, and the pickle pucks and pipes and all that are already being used. And I would use a canning funnel, but the jars on this are basically just as wide as a canning funnel, so. With all of this, you want to make sure that your hands are clean, your utensils are clean, just you want to make sure that everything is clean. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and transfer the hot brine to a bowl just to kind of help further cool it off a bit. So now we're going to go ahead and add the remaining number of, 335 milliliters of water. And then I'm gonna go ahead and temp it just to make sure that it is cool enough to be able to use in the ferment. It's 94. It's 94 degrees. So I'm gonna let this set for just maybe like 10-15 minutes and let it cool off because I want it to be like right around 85, 90, something like that. So I'm gonna bring you back in just a few minutes when this cools off. We have our brine and forgot to hit record. So we poured the brine, the kraut brine on top. And that's basically just a starter to get the whole thing going and the whole process started. And then we poured our salt water, the actual brine, on top of the berries. And so the next thing that we're gonna do, oh, and then I poured too much, so I poured some off. But honestly, now I'm thinking about it, probably still need to do even more. Okay, that might work. So I have a Ziploc bag, and it is filled with a salt water brine water mixture. It's not like an activated brine or anything, it's just literally just salt water. But it's the same ratio that we use inside of the ferment, and the reason that we do that is in case it punctures a hole in it or there's something that goes wrong, if the bag leaches or something like that, if it goes into the ferment, it won't destroy the ferment, it will be exactly the same. So that's kind of the gist behind it. You don't want to put anything funky in there. You don't want to use plain water because then that could dilute the ferment and you have to toss it. Or just add a bunch more salt and try and guess everything. So now that we have the ferment at the proper amount of liquid in there, we just put it on top here. And the reason that it's important that you don't want the water to be so overflowing that it is overflowing the jar, because what can happen is that over time, the jar, if you leave it like this, right? And it's got just a little bit of water in there. Over time, the weight of that is just gonna kind of slowly start to pull the bag, and it's gonna slowly start to just come out of the jar. And then your thing is completely uncovered, it's unweighted, and it's exposed to oxygen. If you're not paying attention, you know, maybe you don't check it for a couple of days, like it could go wrong. So you wanna make sure that there's just enough in here to keep the weight down, but not so much that the water, even inside the Ziploc, is overflowing, because that can happen. I've had it happen. When you kind of tend to experiment as much as I do, you make a lot of mistakes and you learn pretty quick. Or I don't even know if you learn pretty quick, but you learn a lot. There we go. We got it. We got it. Okay, so basically what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put it in the corner with the rest of our ferments, and we're gonna let this thing go. We're gonna start checking it in a few days. According to this book, it had a really, really cool timing on it. And I wanna kind of show you. I found it really handy, and this is for just this type of fruit ferment. And it showed right here, if you're fermenting it above, this is kind of the recommendation. If you're fermenting it above 68 degrees, you want to do 5 days or less, and 65 to 68 for 6 days. And it kind of just gives a general guideline. And what it says the best for the flavor is doing it at 64 degrees for 7 days. I don't have access to 64 degrees. So we're just going to ferment this until it's done. But if you have the ability to temperature control your fermenting environment, that's awesome and amazing. Go for it. I don't. So we're just gonna ferment it until it's done, like I said. And if the reason that it matters what temperature that you ferment it at is that the warmer that you ferment it at, the quicker it ferments. And it also tends to bypass some stages of the fermentation process, especially when you're fermenting fruits. And if you add any kind of a starter culture to it, that will accelerate the fermentation process, and that will make it so that certain parts of the fermentation stages have not been met, and it's not gonna have quite the umami kind of flavor to it. Like, it's gonna be missing things, and it's not gonna be quite as developed and a complex flavor. It's just basically, to sum it up, it tastes better when it takes longer because it goes through different stages and does different processes, different bacteria, different yeast, different everything is just kind of more developed in there. So, you know, the cooler the better to some degree is a pretty good rule of thumb. And to my knowledge, that degree is 55. You don't want to go below 55 because then that kind of really halts it. I mean, if you're really going for like long-term kind of root cellar type thing, go for it, but it'll just take like a year. But if you're wanting to actually consume it anytime soon, then you want to do it above 55, ideally like 50, 65 or higher, up to I think 81 or 82, if I recall, is the cutoff to the point that it's just going to ferment so fast, it's probably going to go bad really quick. But yeah, so we're gonna put this with the rest of our ferments over in the corner, and I will bring you back to check on these just a little while later. Or in a few days. That makes more sense. In a few days. Alrighty, so we are ready to go ahead and do a taste test on our blueberries. If you can see here, let me see if I can get this up here without making a huge mess. If you can see here, it's got a bunch of bubbles up on the top here. And it's just kind of, I don't think it's gonna be ready just yet. I think it's still active. It's still doing its thing. So we're just gonna taste it and see what it tastes like. Ooh, that smells divine. Ooh, that smells so good. I don't know if it's possible to explain that flavor. It's sweet. It's got some heat from the ginger. It is very like a bubbly kind of flavor. Like it's very, like you bite into them and it's just like an explosion of not only flavor, but just like effervescence. It's, wow. That is so good. Holy smokes. Robert and I tasted this the other day. I was just kind of curious what it tasted like, and he really enjoyed it the other day, and I kind of was like, oh, it's pretty good. But this is just amazing. This is so good. So I didn't expect this to actually be done, but I think it's done. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pull this out, I'm gonna throw it, put the lid on it, and I'm gonna put it in the fridge, and I'm just gonna kind of let it marinate in a bit of a colder environment for a little bit longer. And I would imagine the ways that I would consume this would be just out of the jar. It is so good, like you could just eat the entire thing probably in one sitting. At least I could. I don't know, I tend to go crazy on that kind of stuff. But this is just, it's delicious. It is so good. One of the ways that I've seen people use this sort of thing is also with like using, you know, when you have like cream cheese and like crackers or something like that, and you have some kind of a dip on top. Oftentimes it's like a pepper jelly or something like that. They use it like that, and just kind of like a part of a spread sort of thing. And you could also use it anywhere that you would use blueberries, really, I would imagine. And so I don't really know what I'm gonna end up doing with it, but it's gonna be pretty good. So I really hope that you guys try this recipe. I hope that you guys check out that book. I'm gonna go ahead and link it down below so that you guys can find it easily. I really recommend it. I have a bunch more ferments that I'm getting ready to work on, and a bunch of other ones that I've already been working on that I've gotten out of that book. It is a really good book. It has a bunch of really good recipes, a lot of really valuable information, and it just has normal recipes. If you like to be really adventurous with your eating, if you like to get a lot of ingredients and stuff like that, you know, you might enjoy some of the other books that are out there. But this one, I really liked it because the recipes that I have come across so far are very simple. They're few ingredients, and it's not anything that's super crazy. It's not like these big fancy things. The recipes in this book are just simple. They're easy to do, easy to follow, and I think she gives enough information in the beginning of the book to really be able to understand what they are trying to relay. Definitely check out this recipe. It is so good. It's blueberry season, so it is definitely the time to get out there and make some blueberry ferments. I have a couple other ones coming for you, and so I hope you enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time. Bye.